So ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new DCU discussion series episode, and this is one that I've been meaning to do ever since the Peacemaker finale. So there's quite a bit to discuss since that dropped, but things have been getting a bit hectic on the channel since then, which is why there's been a bit of a delay. You know, we've had James Gunn himself on the channel, which has offered a nugget or two more. There's the ever-growing speculation of what could be happening in the future, whether that just be the DCU's future in general, but also with the whole Warner Brothers thing, of course. And in case you're brand new here, that is what all of this is about. We have a good ramble session based on what's been happening, with a bit of back and forth between me and you guys. So right before we get into today's video, if you're brand new here on the channel, or if you found yourself coming back here again and again from the recommended page, consider subscribing for more videos just like this, discussion series, news updates, reviews, and according to my analytics, 42% of you regular viewers out there aren't subscribed to the channel. So maybe today is the day you'll hop on board, and if so, thank you for supporting the channel, and I hope you enjoy the videos to come. Now, starting off here with Raz Attackify. I like James Gunn, but so far it's just been his tone and vision. I'm excited to get some tonal diversity with the crime drama Lanterns and the horror film Clayface. So this is something I see a lot. I've seen so much commentary surrounding this very topic where, you know, of course, you know, you can say, yeah, it's Twitter or the YouTube comments or whatever it may be, but there are many people genuinely writing. I'm not saying obviously Raz is writing off the DCU, but people get to the point of being at the place of, okay, we're 2 live action projects in. We're Superman, 1 movie in the DCU. We're 1 movie in. Then you have 1 live action series, Peacemaker, and it's like, sure, you may not like the kind of style of Gunn with Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, maybe Superman you liked but you didn't love it, or whatever it may be, but that's it, I'm done with the DCU, I'm bored of it, and I don't like where it's going, this, that, and the other. The one thing I think, fail to understand, where some people write it off, or some people are really kind of like, damn, I really just don't know about the future, is exactly what Raz is saying here. Raz points out, once again, I like James Gunn, but so far it's just been his tone and vision. I'm excited to get some tonal diversity with the crime drama Lanterns, and guess what? The horror film Clayface, and guess what? Lanterns is not written nor directed by James Gunn. Clayface was not written by James Gunn. It was written by Mike Flanagan, nor is it directed by James Gunn. It's literally directed by James Watkins. So already there, not to mention Supergirl, not written by James Gunn. It was written by Anna Noguera, and it's being directed by Craig Gillespie. That is 3 projects in a row now that we are going to be getting in the DCU that, say what you will about your critique or feedback about James Gunn's tone or vision and whether you like or dislike his projects, that's completely fair game. You can have your opinion there. But no matter what, the DCU going forward, at least until Man of Tomorrow, we're getting completely different things. Now, of course, like one thing I will say is like, just like Kevin Feige in the MCU, you'll have different directors, different writers write these movies, but he's still kind of bullet pointing on the Word document, being like, right, I want this to get to this point. I want this to happen in Fantastic Four. So this then happens in Avengers Doomsday because it needs to set up to that. And then in Avengers Doomsday, kind of this needs to happen so we can get to Secret Wars. Like obviously Gunn and Safran, way back in the early days of the DCU when they kind of locked themselves away, as they said, did a rough roadmap for where things are going to go. Sure, some things have been subject to change, but the plot threads and stuff that go significantly further down into this 8 to 10 year plan, which will absolutely consist of the story beats, plot threads, whatever that he would have outlined. But not all of them are written or directed by him. So this has been a long, rambly, roundabout way of saying that I feel like, while I can't guarantee that you watching right now, who may have been in a similar camp to some of the situations I've been describing here, will you love Lanterns? No, I can't guarantee that. Will you love Clayface? I can't guarantee that. Will you love Supergirl? I can't guarantee that. But you are going to get different visions. And this is the one thing I think the most important thing for me, beyond anything else, ever since Gunn came in as co-CEO of DC Studios, when he was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, Inside of You, like ages ago, that I loved hearing him talk about, is that he identifies and realizes one of the fallible things in cinematic universes and Hollywood in general is spectacle fatigue rather than just, this comic book fatigue. Now, without me going off on a massive tangent here, he's always said that he understood it's important to get other creatives and other people writing and directing things and have more artist-driven movies rather than studio-dictated, the same feeling cookie cutter movies that we can see out there where the story isn't that great. You might not care about the characters because there aren't really any stakes. They over rely on things like spectacle and CG, and more budget must mean more box office, right? No. So you don't have to like Superman. You don't have to, or maybe you do, but you don't like Creature Commandos. You really didn't like Peacemaker, but you might like Lanterns. And that is something that is my most anticipated project in the DCU. And has been for some time. And obviously that's within the scope of what is coming out soon. Like, obviously, if Batman Brave and the Bold was around the corner next year, I might have changed my ranking there. But Lanterns has always been one that, would I pick that over watching Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow? If I had a choice to press a button right now and Gunn said to me, hey, do you want to watch one of them? I would pick Lanterns. Lanterns is something I can't guarantee will please you, but at least we've got another vision here, which could be another Emmy thing, an Emmy nominee like the Penguin. Well, the Penguin actually went on to win Emmys. And what if, again, separate us here, the people who watch this video, the people like me who talk about it, who are really embedded in conversations like this about comic. Now just think of the people, the many more hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who go on the streaming app to watch something like the Penguin, who aren't so super comic book minded, and think about how they might enjoy Lanterns. I think those are the people we often forget that are also catered to than just, the comic book audience, right? I think if we always just, this sounds weird to say, because obviously comic book fans are very important here, but if we just catered to them, it would be an impossible thing, because you can't please everyone especially in fandoms like this. So what I'm trying to say is, Lanterns, completely different vision. Clayface, think about how well horror movies are doing now more than ever. This is from the mind of Mike Flanagan and the execution of James Watkins. And if we keep going from there on out, it's going to be interesting to see where things go. Up next from Proxima Centauri 8262, I feel like lots of people are jumping to the worst case scenario with Warner Brothers being sold. DC Studios and its current trajectory are part of the overall product being sold. I don't see why a company would spend so much money buying a product, then spend even more money interfering with how that product operates, risking it losing all functionality. Then we have Call Me Jacobs 3234 saying, I don't think we have to worry about the DC being cancelled if Warner Brothers is sold. It would be extremely stupid to cancel a reboot just to start another reboot. It would be even dumber to bring back a dead franchise like the DCEU. The best course of action is keeping the DCU going as planned. As for Brave and the Bold, a lot of people are doubting Andy Muschietti because of The Flash, but I thought the Batman stuff was handled very well in that movie. I don't think Andy was the right fit for Flash, but I think he'll do a good job with Batman, especially a fantastical Batman. I agree with what these two guys just said. Business-wise, it just doesn't really add up to come in and just completely crumble everything to the floor. I said this weird analogy in my live stream. It's like, if you're in the business of nuclear energy and you buy a nuclear power plant, right? You don't take over that nuclear power plant just to press the button that sends it into a nuclear reactor meltdown for you to just then build your own nuclear reactor that is getting you nuclear energy, right? There's no logic in that whatsoever. You would just buy the nuclear reactor and take it over and carry on making your nuclear energy. So it's kind of like a random analogy, but it's the same principle here with whoever purchases Warner Brothers. The DC Studios DCU is still so brand new. I want to remind everyone, one movie in, one live action show in, and with what we've already covered here with the previous questions of how we've got more projects outside of the scope of Gunn's his own personal vision with James Watkins, Craig Gillespie, Mike Flanagan's writing, Chris Mundy with Lanterns. This is why I say those projects are going to come out. We're going to probably circle back around to Man of Tomorrow. That's going to release in the summer. You would then have the Batman Part 2 release in October 2027, which is ultimately, again, why I say maybe around 2028 with whatever's going on there, with this new company having let the DCU, the DC Studios studio do its thing for a couple more years, that's when you would reevaluate. Like, that's the most, like, even if I try and account for some illogical things amongst the logical approach, the rational approach, that is just like the realistic way I see it going. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I will be absolutely jaw to the floor, gobsmacked, if they just, I don't know, completely yeet everything out. I just don't see a world in where that happens, but I guess you could allow some speculation for what I've also entertained on the channel. Okay, I still see the DC Studios thing carrying forward as a studio. I see the DCU canon carrying forward with the castings, but maybe the creatives are reevaluated, such as James Gunn. But even then, you're going to have Man of Tomorrow rolling in production by April next year, before the Warner Brothers split and acquisition, like, even goes through. So you're going to have Gunn still working on Superman in 2027 before it releases in the summer. And I really don't think they're going to do a whole Batgirl tax write-off thing, whoever acquires this. That's really dumb. Really dumb. When you know, the new company buying a new IP still wants to utilize this IP and put movies and get profit and revenue off of it, right? Like, do you see how nonsensical the doom posting is about all of this? And then, now this isn't a sure thing, but one of the latest bids from Paramount included the offer of keeping David Zaslav on as co-CEO with David Ellison. Now, I find that only more encouraging because James Gunn was basically David Zaslav's boy, in terms of, like, okay, like, David Zaslav, he's like trying to do various things on the cooker. He's got like the Harry Potter thing going on over there. I'm gonna revitalize, or attempt to revitalize, and set a mandate to revitalize that IP. I've set a mandate to kind of revitalize the Lord of the Rings glory days of the early 2000s, and now I've got my boy Gunn over here trying to cook with all of this, which we've still yet to see all of the other creative directors and writers bring their projects to the big screen, which is happening. We've only had Gunn so far. Do you see what I mean? Like, so David Zaslav, it doesn't mean this is going to happen, but if he sells Warner Brothers to, let's say, Paramount, and he accepts, okay, yeah, make sure you include what you offered before, the co-CEO role, David Zaslav would probably be like, look, David, now I'm co-CEO with you. I'm keeping Gunn, by the way. Like, you know, he might be like, yeah, okay. Now, I know there's the whole political side that comes into this. And by the way, I'm not trying to pretend to be a know-it-all. I could be wrong, but I'm just offering you as comprehensively as I can look at this whole thing with regards to, like, DC Studios, the DCU. I will completely give you a bit of leeway with how, okay, in 2028, some things we might do a bit of a survey and kind of be like, okay, maybe the roof needs replacing. Okay, maybe you might want to get your boiler replaced or something like that with regards to DC Studios. Maybe they might want to go over different blah, blah, blah. And maybe, you know, but that's in 2028. That would be reasonable. I think David Zaslav himself, if Warner Brothers never sold, would be doing that himself come 2028. So with everything, if you've heard what I've said up until this point about that, what are your thoughts on my thoughts about everything I just said with regards to the whole prospect of Warner Brothers selling, even if it's just in different assets and stuff like that? And do you agree or disagree with me? Now, as for Call Me Jacob's comment about Andy Muschietti here, a lot of people are doubting Andy Muschietti because of The Flash, which is, you know, it's interesting. I'm not saying everyone's switched up, but after Welcome to Derry, you know, it's interesting to see a lot of people are, oh, well, maybe we called out Andy Muschietti too soon. Now, I'm not, again, putting that on everyone. I think the situation is with Andy Muschietti and fans feeling very skeptical about him handling the brave and the bold is, even if you feel, and this is what I think is fair, like, even if you feel like the Flash movie, with the amount of, development hell that movie went through, like, Andy Muschietti was always gonna be faced with a very hard task to deliver with that film. So even if you want to give him some grace there and be like, okay, well, when it comes to Brave and the Bold, he could do something pretty sweet. I think for what it is for most people is that, okay, maybe Andy Muschietti could create something like decent to good enough, but they want such a, you know, crazy director who is almost borderline guaranteed without, you know, you can't guarantee it, but more so than Andy, I think, in their minds, to deliver something that is just like okay, let's just go in with no doubts. It's like people saying, okay, if we're not getting Greg Fraser for the cinematographer of the Batman Part 2, Roger Deakins, it's like a lot of people would be like, I have no doubts about that. They want that director equivalent for the DCU Batman movie, not a director where even if they kind of reviewed their opinion about it more and more, and they're like, okay, if Andy could probably, he could come over and do. But like, shouldn't Gunn go with a director who is more of a sure shot? Like more of an industry-wide kind of like, okay, we can definitely feel super comfortable with this director delivering. Whereas Andy Muschietti could do some cool things with Batman, but will it be more of like a mid to kind of good movie, but you want to strive for more like, where if this director, said director, there is not a doubt in our minds that it's gonna go freaking hard, right? Now, AK Channel TV 4084 says, I know I'm in the minority, but I'm super excited for Andy's Batman Brave and the Bold film. He had to deal with a behind-the-scenes disaster with The Flash, as well as tremendous studio interference. If he's given a clean slate, I think he can create something awesome. And I think I wanted to end on that with this discussion on this topic, just to kind of gauge where everyone is at. Like, are you kind of with what AK Channel TV just said? I know some of you won't be, but are there quite a few of you out there who are like, you know what? No, but seriously, given this clean slate, he might be able to cook something really, really cool. I would just love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, up next from Whiteout Got You, they say, seems like Damian is out, as that was really the only information Gunn gave us in his Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters video about the Brave and the Bold. So what Whiteout is kind of referencing here is the commentary that we've heard the past few weeks to a month or so about how James Gunn has said in an article with IGN, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he was being asked about DCU Batman's age, and he said, I think you'll have to wait to see the movie. Some things have changed and are in flux when it comes to Damian's parentage and stuff like that. And this has led to this whole speculation about, okay, so what if the Brave and the Bold is drastically changed up until a point of where Damian Wayne is no longer the focus? So the whole scope of the question, and even Gunn's answer, still surrounds Damian's parentage, which is why I've always been like, well, I wouldn't write off the whole Damian Wayne part of the movie just yet. It may be that he's less of a focus, but it would be pretty damn interesting if he did completely change things up. But I don't know why he would really do that. Like, why change visions if that was your pitch all along? You could still do a movie about Damian and Batman. What changed to make you doubt or not want to pursue that anymore? So I think there's no reason to really think that's not still the thing. It's just maybe some other things have changed behind the scenes. And I've lent into the idea of what if they want to introduce Batman a little bit earlier than the debut DCU Batman movie, which was the original plan, obviously, and they could implement Batman into Man of Tomorrow, or even kind of do a Creature Commandos-esque cameo, but something a smidge more in Clayface. Then we have Andy Muschietti recently saying that they need to wait a couple of months until they talk about it, and you see Barbara react to that, and, you know, are people taking this too literally? Was Andy Muschietti just basically saying we can't talk about it for a while, but we're like focusing too much in on him saying a couple of months, meaning, oh, we're going to get an announcement in a couple of months? Maybe we are reading too deep into that. Maybe it's just like he can't talk about it for some time, and that's all it was. Like, so nothing's really changed there. Or maybe we are going to get out. That's the thing. I say that just because you could argue if Batman was meant to be a Man of Tomorrow or Bruce Wayne, and there's some kind of soft introduction. I say soft because he might not be in the movie as much as you would think, but they could still softly introduce him. Well, that would mean a Bruce Wayne Batman actor being cast well before planned with regards to the original intention of only having Batman debut in the DCU when the Brave and the Bold was proper gearing up. Arguably, if they can't talk about it for a few months or something, you know, maybe it's because they can talk about it once a DCU Batman actor is cast, but you can see where we're going here. We're going down the whirlpool of rabbit holes here. The rabbit holes have whirlpools. You get my point. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this. How can we look at this as rationally as we can. Now, SpongeMan Ross says, I can't wait to watch the damn Lanterns. Just release the teaser already. Hope we can see the teaser this year. I mean, you if you've seen my James Gunn interview, you might know that I asked this.
I'm probably pushing my luck here, but could we get our first peek at Lanterns before the year is over at all?
Okay. So I've seen the peak, I think, at least where it is now. But I don't know what, I have no clue what the when that's planned to be shown to.
Yeah. More of a marketing side of things, I assume.
Yeah, and also it is like,
so I tried to the Lanterns fans to get an answer, but like Gunn wasn't mega sure. Like obviously he can review things behind the scenes, like the current cut of the peak, the sneak peek so far. But as for like the marketing, especially for HBO stuff, like I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's the co-CEO of DC Studios, shouldn't he know this? Like it isn't unusual at all for someone like HBO to and their marketing to handle all of that stuff, right? I'm looking things up on my other screen right now. It's like, okay, we had the trailer for House of the Dragon Season 2 drop in 4th of December 2023 for it to release June 16th. The following year in 2024. And it's like, well, okay, we could be getting Lanterns. It could be April, May. Could maybe be early, which would mean if they follow any kind of pattern there for HBO things, well, we should be getting the trailer any week now kind of thing, right? And then, as for the Penguin, we got the first teaser. So ignoring the in production thing, because that doesn't happen for everything, the first teaser trailer for the Penguin released around 6 months before in March, for it to release in September of the same year in 2024. So 6 months, right? So with Lanterns, we just need to figure out, well, we can't figure out, but it depends on when it finally releases. Some people are saying, like, what if it releases very early in the year, like February or something like that, or January? And I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, the only thing I have to go off is this interview Gunn was doing before Superman released, and he was talking about the DCU very quickly, and they asked when Lanterns is coming out, and he was like, just under a year from now, and he was kind of like umming and ahhing about it. So like that was, I believe that interview took place in June. So if we're kind of trying to loosely take what he said there and like, okay, in June he said in just under a year. So that would be kind of what we've been roughly expecting. Lanterns Season 1 to release around about April, May. So the chances of us getting a trailer this year, I think, are reasonably, like our first teaser, reasonably strong if we just go off of that. And I say that because, okay, let's just say we're in November now, November 1st. All of November, December, January, February, March, April. So that means 6 months roughly, there's a precedent there for multiple other HBO shows being 6 months for the first teaser. 6 months takes us to April next year. You could say, okay, let's just say it comes out May. Well, you just adjust that, and that means the trailer could release in December because, 6 months from December means May. So maybe this year. I don't want to promise anything because you can't always just say, that there's a little bit of a pattern with the marketing, so they're going to do the exact same thing for the next show, when sometimes they do change tactics. But if we are to go off of what I've talked about here, then yeah, maybe we get some kind of first teaser in November, maybe December, and I guess fingers crossed. Now up next from Why Too Many, they say, to be honest, I don't care if Darkseid is the big bad of the DC universe, but I want him to be in the universe and a character that exists kind of like how he does in the comics. He isn't always the villain, but is a force in the universe that exists. That is my exact thoughts as well. Like, I've already expressed how, the idea of, I mean, this goes back to the discussion series videos like you're watching right now back in 2023, where we were talking about big bads. I think I even have a video covering what big bads could be in the DCU. And I say, with regards to Darkseid, I just don't expect Darkseid. People would often say, why? And, just for very plain reasons, such as I don't think, if you imagine yourself being the new CEO of a studio, you're kind of doing a somewhat reboot of DC. Are you really going to build up to and place your main big bad as the big bad of the previous DCEU that was originally being sought after. No, you would never hear the end of it. I think you would want to kind of tread your own ground with other possible antagonists and big bads. You know, that alone was enough for me, and I kind of understood it. But I've never ruled out the idea of, okay, well, the idea of new gods could be flirted with at some point in a DCU that is spanning not just Earth stories, but, you know, in Supergirl, we're really flying out there to this cosmic adventure. We obviously don't know if Mr. Miracle, that series, if it's in the DCU or not. I find it weird. Like, I've always said, I don't know if it is in the DCU because they never said it was. Like, why not announce it right from when it's first announced as in the DCU? But they didn't. But if they did want to make it canon to the DCU, it's cool to know it's like, okay, here's this, you know, Mr. Miracle adventure with the new gods and Darkseid all the way, you know, over there with New Genesis and everything. It doesn't mean it has to impact what's going on over here on Earth, right? But he's out there, and I think that's the way it could be and will be. We could see him one day. Wouldn't really count on it anytime soon. When it comes to Salvation, Gunn said he's taking the concept of that metahuman prison planet in the comics, like it being a prison planet for metahumans, and that's kind of it. New Gods wouldn't rely on that, with it being a New Gods training ground and Darkseid sending the parademons there to kind of test them out. No. So I don't think we're going to get anything like that. I've gone on about this at length as well. I think Salvation will be kind of combined with another concept in the comics, which we have still yet to kind of learn about. I know some people are disappointed by this in terms of, yeah, but you could still do Darkseid. Like, Darkseid's so cool. And it's like, I totally resonate with that, but I think for me, maybe it's just that my expectations were already set for years now. Never, ever, really ever expecting to get Darkseid. For me, it's just like, it's flying over my head. Like, it's no difference to me. Plus, there are many other big bads which can be used and even propelled to new heights of popularity if executed in an awesome way. So Scott Thomas 7552 says, currently reading The New Frontier at the moment. Can you recall what chapter 4 was titled? Hint, it was Gods and Monsters. But like you said, that could be a happy coincidence. Exactly. So the Gods and Monsters thing, you know, the center has been something that we've talked about on the channel for the past couple of years. It's been out there in fan discussions. And like, Gunn did his research. Obviously, he's a comic book fan first and foremost, but obviously when going away to write the big plan of the DCU, he would have done this other deep dive, and Gods and Monsters is a direct rip from one of the chapters. I think, was it chapter 4 in Justice League The New Frontier. Now, sure, you don't have to take that so literally, but the conversation about the center has popped up again when, you know, we have the Salvation run story being teased to us in some way, shape, or form at the end of Peacemaker. So we have Sleepy Cat Films here saying, theory for you, Boba, what if Salvation is the DCU version of Dinosaur Island, and how it connects to Lanterns is the cosmic horror of Dinosaur Island, and we're building to a Justice League New Frontier story. I know you talked about Dinosaur Island thing specifically, but what if that's what we're building towards? I love your videos. Keep up the great work. Thank you, man. And I wouldn't rule it out. Like, this is literally why I asked this in my interview with James Gunn. And like, I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own arse here. Like, I have no idea if I was on the ball and he would have given me this answer anyway, or like, what if, you know, I presented the idea that a lot of us are talking about already, and I was on the ball, and he was like, oh, okay, and like kind of pivoted away to kind of make the answer about something else. Because, you know, no matter what, right? Like, if I actually correctly guessed the center was a concept that is being combined with Salvation, the other dimensions planet, he wouldn't say, oh yeah, man, oh god, yeah, okay, that's cool, you guessed it. He would have given me this answer either way. But just to play the clip again.
Are there any other concepts you will be drawing on to bring this planet to life? For instance, I mean, I may be way off here, but the noises Peacemaker heard through the trees really gave me some Dinosaur Island vibes, so...
Oh, that's cool.
So obviously it remains a mystery, and that's something I really like the idea of. I think there are seeds of like this circumstantial evidence where it's like, okay, but what if it is the center? And it's like, okay, yeah, Gunn's just adapting the concept of it being a metahuman prison planet when it comes to Salvation, but what would the other thing be? What are the noises through the trees that Peacemaker heard? Sure, there's stuff on Salvation anyway, but like you could basically combine the concept of the center, Dinosaur Island, which if you didn't know already, is this primordial kind of sentient part of the earth that has existed for God knows how many years. It harbors various, it harbors dinosaurs from the bygone times of when they used to be, and it resents humanity for, reasons that humans aren't always, great for the planet. Basically, you get the idea, but that's a part of the earth, but you could be like, okay, what if it's a part of Salvation? And because Argus didn't do their due diligence, the more they put metahumans on this planet, the more it kind of pokes the bear, and it's like, wait, what? But I don't know. Like when we kind of talk about how Lanterns is, we have Sleepy Cat Film saying, what if Dinosaur Island connects to Lanterns and it's the cosmic horror that they stumble across, as James Gunn said, like Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, they discover this terrifying mystery and uncover this ancient horror on Earth. That's the thing. This is the thing where I was trying to also say in my interview, okay, you've said that there's plot threads that Peacemaker and Lantern set up that go far into the future, like, and how far did these go? And he once again doubled down that, for example, the Lantern's plot thread that show sets up goes significantly further than Man of Tomorrow. We know that Man of Tomorrow comes out in 2027, and whatever this is goes significantly beyond that. So 2028, 2029, 2030, who knows? And yes, I have absolutely entertained the idea of, okay, what if this murder in the American heartlands that Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart stumble across and investigate is ultimately leading towards this cult in this town that Sheriff Kerry is looking into with these community secrets, and this then goes into the comic book strip of where you actually had the cult trying to like sacrifice people to the center and all of that weird juju. What if it's like something larger like that? But there's certain other things that just separate me from this. So like, okay, what I'm now pitching or like proposing the theory of is, what if Salvation is something that Gunn's adapting, the concept of Salvation being a metahuman prison planet? Sure, he could also incorporate it with other comic book concepts, but Lanterns over here is setting up something much further down the line to happen. A plot thread that could echo, again, as he said, significantly further than Man of Tomorrow. And this then goes into what I covered in my Everything or What We Know About Lanterns So Far video, in where I'm not saying they're going to do a Blackest Night adaptation right away in the first 3 to 4 years in the DCU. Hence why Gunn said significantly further than Man of Tomorrow. But they basically open Pandora's box, because with the Lantern series, there's things, all while I can't be sure, but there's things that point kind of further away from the center in some ways. Like, we know that Salvation is in another dimension. It's not like on our plane, or like, you can't go there through space. Gunn has doubled down and confirmed this, by the way, because I've seen some people say, like, what if the quantum unfolding chamber leads to other planets, but in our universe? No, it's a place that leads to 99 other dimensions. So Salvation is a planet, but in another dimension. With Lanterns, James Gunn and Peter Safran described Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart uncovering and stumbling across this ancient horror on Earth. That's not in another dimension. So this basically takes me back to the whole concept of how Lanterns could be setting up a very, very, very early kind of prelude to something Blackest Night. Because one thing that we have to work with here is like, okay, there's an ancient horror on Earth. I'm not saying they're going to pierce the veil and try and literally release Necron, but they could be getting into very early William Hand, Black Hand stuff, where even when William Hand took that rod from Atrocitus and ran away from Sinestro and Hal Jordan, he didn't become like fully fledged Black Hand, Blackest Night, starting right away. There were like stuff that the comic shows that he was experiencing in between. Plus, adaptations don't copy and paste, so what I'm trying to say here is you might have an adaptation of the earliest prelude to Blackest Night where you have William Mason and his son Billy Mason in this town, and there's some kind of weird community secret and, you know, cult thing going on. Yes, there's this murder in the American heartlands that warranted the attention of Lanterns, superseded the police, the sheriff, the FBI. No, we're going straight to Lanterns to look into this. So it could get into really weird, creepy ass shit, but it pertains to an ancient horror. Then you combine the idea that apparently Paul Ben Victor is playing Atrocitus, and we know that he plays quite an important role in the prelude to Blackest Night. And it's like, okay, so now you look at Lanterns and you've got a show here where it's like, to me, this sounds like you've got the ingredients. You got your onion, you got your carrots, you got this, you got that. And it's the right ingredients to cook something, maybe albeit a new form, so an adaptation of something that leads into a long-term, significantly further than Man of Tomorrow, Blackest Night kind of thing. That might not be directly connected to what's going on with Salvation through the QEC or what, you know, what Argus is doing with that. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's exposition references with how Jordan and John Stewart may do a line or something every now and again, like, or there's reports of how metahumans are going missing, and that, like, technically world builds and connects to what Argus and Rick Flag Sr. are doing. But like this, as Gunn said, Lanterns is its own thing. And in my interview with him, there's a plot thread that gets set up that goes significantly further than Man of Tomorrow. To me, it's like, what if this series... I know I keep going around in circles here, but I don't expect Blackest Night to be discovered or the prophecy here to be kind of discovered and kind of thwarted by the finale, but rather like a can of worms is opened. Maybe the Blackest Night prophecy is truly learned, or like it was kind of this fable, or like this moment where Hal has to go back to Sinestro, his old mentor, where they heard that message from Abin Sur talking about, you know, how Atrocitus and his whole sector got wiped out by manhunters, but there was also this prophecy of the Blackest Night that I was looking into. But maybe how Jordan and Sinestro never took it seriously, but now there's a bit too much adding up from something they dismissed from 20 years ago. There's more comments, and I get it, because I've explored this avenue myself, like Timothy Patch, 5080, saying, I think Salvation is the center, and the Green Lanterns will be investigating the center cult, and right now, Flag is under control by the center. I love all of these ideas, and maybe I'm taking Gunn's quote of ancient horror on Earth too literally, and he still meant the Salvation dimension, but I don't know, it still feels quite removed from me. Maybe I've got bias inbuilt now with my theory of this, you know, with the idea of Sinestro involved, maybe flashbacks there, Atrocitus and his hand to play in Abin Sur, Manhunters, Blackest Night, and the idea of the show not having to fulfill, obviously, all of Blackest Night, but kind of doing this retrospective, yet linking to modern day story of how the past of how Jordan's career with his mentor of Sinestro ties into something that is still ongoing and present day with the prophecy of the Blackest Night just really being uncovered as more of a serious thread and a significant plot thread that can unfold significantly further down the line beyond Man of Tomorrow. Now, yes, they could still just be investigating a cult that is trying to bring about the center. I mean, there's nothing stopping a cult in Rushville, Nebraska that Hal Jordan and John Stewart go into, like, you know, gathering together to summon something from a different dimension. Quite often, if you're a cult and you know, obviously you're trying to summon something, it's not on the same plane of existence. But yeah, I don't know. Enough rambling from me about that. I would love to know your thoughts. I really, if you couldn't tell already, am quite split. I think more than 50% of me leans more towards the ancient horror on Earth now not being the center and maybe something more Blackest Night prophecy related. Again, with no intention to fulfill that in the first couple of years of the DCU. But at the same time, I decide, well, I do see the cult in my mind that they stumble across, and it's somehow linked to this. But I don't know, is it really linked to an ancient horror on Earth? I don't know, guys, help me. Which is when we get Benjamin Poindexter 17 saying, what if far in the future we get Justice League Salvation, and Lex Radu saying, theory, the Justice League and the DCU will form as a direct response to Rick Flag Sr.'s Salvation project. This is something I can still see happening. Again, like, what if Lantern sets up a more significant plot thread further down the line, but over here with Salvation, it's more of the near-term thing that might still go beyond Man of Tomorrow. It's still a problem that after Man of Tomorrow and whatever Lex and Superman unite against to face, it goes on after that to like birth this kind of New Frontier inspired project where it is like, yes, Justice League Salvation Run or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. That's a concept I can really buy. But also, you know, what's cooking over here is the thing that Hal Jordan and John Stewart uncovered in the Lantern series that is still unresolved, for that horrific kind of prospect of a story to materialize one day in the future. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna leave this ramble there. I've rambled enough. I hope this gave you more than enough to chew on. Down in the comments below, just let me know your ideas, your theories, your expanded thoughts on what I had to say. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You know how it goes here. But if you're still watching right now, I would deeply appreciate a like on the video. Consider clicking the hype button as well if you have that available in your location. Would greatly appreciate as well if you considered subscribing, especially if you're watching off your recommended page again and again. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.